Good evening. I'm Father Russ Carmichael, and this is Street Talk. And right away, you can see on the TV with me, my co-hostess is back. Bonnie Sudowski is here with me today. I got a great show for you. I've got two other friends sitting across from me. I have my other co-host that's across the table. Dominic is with me, and I have a great guest that come up all the way from Oxford to be with us today, so that I can tell you. I have Kathy Johnson with me, and Kathy Johnson is an advocate for the brain injury stuff, and she was the first select woman of Oxford. So we got a lot to talk about, and obviously we think we're doing a pretty good season this year. Dominic and I have had different individuals on. We had Michael Lennard, we had
Bill Sadai.
Bill Sadai was on, and before I go too far, Senator Maynard was due to be on soon, but Senator Maynard had an accident, and we're all praying for his injury. And of course, we love Andy Maynard. We've known him a very, very long time personally, and we're hoping for his best. And hopefully, by the time he sees this show, he'll be up running around and able to do another show with us. But I want to get right into it, and I want to introduce my guest tonight, because all of us at the table have been involved with brain injury individuals. So that's key. Everybody here is an advocate or employed under the brain injury situation. And what I'm going to do is go around the table so that each person gets introduced, because they didn't know what I was going to do. But I like
Again.
that. Again. Okay, I like to. I know two of us have brain injury children. I don't usually advertise that my oldest, is brain injured and is in the Veterans Hospital in Louisiana. I've always kind of kept that low key. I don't talk about Bruce's situation much. And of course, most people know I'm an independent living skills person, and Bonnie and I have been in the business quite a long.
At least 12, 14 years
12,
now.
14 years now.
Yeah.
We dealt with Auntie Gail, who we lost about a year and a half ago, and we've had some losses in the last time. So well, I'm gonna bang right away at you, Bonnie. I want you to tell the audience, you know who you are. Yeah.
I'm Bonnie Sudowski, and a lot of you probably haven't seen me for a while. It's been about a year and a half since I've been co-hosting. I started with the brain injury waiver in 2003. Started off running an agency, or working for an agency up in Norwich. I'm not really sure if I should name now. Probably not.
Leave it alone. You know.
Great agency. Spent a lot of time there. Learned an immense amount about the brain injury program. We also worked on other programs with other individuals, mental health counseling, whatever the case may be. And from that point, learning the process, bringing new people on, working up with Hospital for Special Care to bring people out of the hospital into the community. Working with whatever evaluations, diagnoses had to be done, and through that time went from learning the process to management to ILST to case management to where we are now actually running what we consider a quasi-communal ABI group home, but in keeping with the ABI waiver, what we do is everyone still has their own separate apartments and their own separate staff and their own separate lives. But what we've done in the house, which is wonderful, is that it's a community family setting for in the kitchen, for in the dining room, for the 3 meals and snacks a day, in the living room, whoever wants to watch TV, play a game, playing cards. If you want to go out and work in the garden, go to the gym, we've incorporated everything into the program so that it really becomes a real life healthy situation.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. Right. And my next person I want to talk to over here, Dominic is sitting right across from me. But Kathy Johnson, bless you, and God bless you for coming up here all the way from Oxford with me. Now, you and I both share the same thing. We have brain injury.
Yes, we do.
And Robert was on one of my shows with me.
Yes.
With you and. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, how you got here.
I thought you'd never ask. I came here how I got to your show here, you mean?
Well, I want to talk about the ABI stuff.
The ABI.
We've been
Well,
involved.
well,
Happened to see for,
yes, we've
what,
been
a year
involved.
plus or 2
Yes,
almost?
what was it, September of last year, we put our foot forward. I did anyway. I got pretty riled up. I heard that maybe we were going to lose the acquired brain injury waiver program, which my son is in. And I was very concerned over that. And I've learned a long time ago that when you go into, when you get involved in these things, you can't just be on the sidelines from the outside looking in. You have to go there and fight. And that's what we did, and we fought hard. It's on the CTN if you ever want to watch it, but we did fight hard. And we came to a point where we were able to make some headway. Now, I talk a little bit about my son. I mean, he was 23 years old when he was in the car accident, and I can't tell you how difficult that was. We were on vacation in Rhode Island, and we got the news. There were no cell phones at the time. We got the news that one of our sons was in a car. Your son is in a car accident. Well, when I heard that my son was in the car accident, we were on the phone with the state police. They put us through to the hospital. Now, I bring this up, and I don't want to be too long about it, but I want people to understand from a mother's point of view how terrible this was. I lived a life of relatively unscathed up till then. When I was on the phone and they explained to me he was thrown out of a truck, I said, wasn't he wearing his seatbelt? They said, no, Mrs. Johnson, he was riding in the bed of the pickup truck. My son was, the truck had an accident on Route 8. My son was thrown out onto the pavement where he was still conscious when he hit the ground, but then blacked out. Well, the rest is, it was like winning the bad lottery. There was a car broke down in the road. The truck hit it, etc. So off to the trauma center he went, and they saved his life. They did not expect him to live. He was 7 months at Gaylord, and then we brought him home. Now, it sounds simple that we did that, but nobody has any idea unless you have lived through the healthcare system, through the entitlement system, through all this. If you sit back and you think, well, we've got great health care, we've got great systems, it's so easy, and there's people who just have an easy ride of getting entitlements. Well, I thought that way too once, until I was living it. And I want to just tell you, when you hit Gaylord, you say, oh my goodness, he came out of a coma, they're going to take him, means there must be hope, Gaylord, Gaylord. Gaylord was wonderful, don't get me wrong, okay? But the first thing you're told is you better apply for Social Security Disability and Title 19. And then the next thing you're told is he has to start progressing a certain amount of time, otherwise we have to let him go off to convalescent home. Well, that's not what you want to hear when you think your son is going to a place where you're really going to get help. Now, he did get a lot of help there, don't get me wrong, but that was hard to take. And at one point, they were considering moving him out, because that's how the rules are. Well, we brought him home, and it took 15 years to bring Robert to where he is today. In the meantime, I had to navigate a system of health care, not knowing what it was like to try to have entitlements, keep them, and what to do. I was going blindly because nobody was giving me a real clear picture. Or direction.
Yeah.
So we had to proceed blindly, only to find out that every time I turn around, nobody wants to be on an entitlement. It's not that easy. Every so many years, the federal government tries to kick my son off the disability. So, But anyway, that's the history. Now, and I will say this from a religious standpoint, because I do have some spiritual thought about faith and all that and God. When I was driving out, when I heard the news from the operator, he was brain injured, the nurse, I started to head for the floor. My husband stopped me. We got in a truck. We were dragging a 26-foot trailer behind us on the truck. and we were trying to head to Bridgeport Hospital as quickly as we possibly could. And I said in the car, and I'm of Greek and Italian background, and I'm an Orthodox Christian, I said, "Blessed Lady Theotokos, you know what it's like to lose a son. Can you please intervene and spare mine?" Well, and then on their way, my husband and I said nothing to each other, except I broke the silence, and I said, and it was a good hour or so ride, I said, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Maybe we better park the truck in our friend's driveway, the trailer, and unhitch it before we go into Bridgeport." My husband said, "We're going straight to Bridgeport, and if I have to leave this truck and trailer in the middle of a street, that's what we will do." And so today, let's move on to today. We're fighting all the time. You never can rest. As a mother, my biggest fear has always been that I will leave this world, and who is going to advocate for my son when the powers that be try over and over again to spoil what he has as his quality of life. And I thank people like Bonnie and you, Dominic, for having wonderful places and ways that you truly take care of and keep mothers like myself safe and feeling confident. And to end it right now on this note. Today, Robert, because he got into the right program with the right ILST and the right organization, they have tapped in on his artistic talent. Robert is a professional artist now. He goes into New York City.
Yeah, he's doing fine.
Yeah.
And we'll get back, okay?
Okay.
Because we're going to
That's
segue.
it, yeah.
No, we're going to
Okay.
segue right
you,
in.
Father.
And we'll talk. We're going to segue
I was gonna
right
say
over
you
to
first right now.
Okay.
I had a thought on
We're-
what you were saying too, but next to
We're
Dominic.
going to go right
Okay.
over here because independent
Yeah.
people, a lot of them, ILST, what we're talking about is independent living
Skills
Trainer.
So
ILST.
go ahead and let's tell my audience who you are, what you've done, and what you do, please. Okay.
What I've done, essentially, I mean, I've worked with people of all varieties of disabilities. I started actually probably when I was about 15 years old. I used to go and work, and didn't work. I volunteered in some of the substance abuse units down in Westport at Holbrook Hospital, and I was involved with that. I got my degree in psychology. I knew kind of early on that this is really where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and what I enjoyed was helping people, helping them, to be able to get a better life or to see things in a different way. From there, I worked in a residential treatment center. We used to specialize in dealing with people with borderline personality disorders, but really worked with a wide variety of people from schizophrenics to people with bipolar disorder, and it was very behaviorally based. We actually had a whole system in which we recorded and tracked everybody's behaviors, activities, and things that they did 24 hours a day. We had a computer system that they would input all this data into, so you could pick profiles of behaviors and see how somebody was getting better, or if they were having a problem, or which medication worked. It was very scientifically based, and that's kind of a lot of where my mindset comes from. I got my first introduction with people with brain injury because there weren't a lot of specific facilities for brain injury. So a lot of them came through the mental health system originally, and it wasn't until a later point in time that they came up with the acquired brain injury waiver. And part of what they came out of was that people weren't effectively getting the right kind of treatment and programs that they needed in the mental health system. And so a lawsuit was brought about by the Brain Injury Association. Some, I think, oh God, it's got to be like 28 or 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Something around that time frame. So I got my first introduction to working with people with brain injury back in the early 90s, and I actually went on to be a program director for that treatment center. And when I left there, I went on to become an advocate at the Brain Injury Association for a year, which really gave me my full introduction into this program, because it was right about the time it just started It came into being in 1999, and I went to work for the Brain Injury Association in 2000, from 2000 to 2001. And I was kind of, as I say, I was kind of lent to them from somebody who was another father, so to speak, who wanted to hire me to come run his programs, but didn't have everything together at the time. So he brought me back, and I started some specialized programs for DEMAS for people that weren't going to be served under the current ABI waiver.
Well, something you're saying there is really important is that the concept of like 20, 30 years ago when it started, so many different issues, like you said, when you were working in mental health, you can't use the cookie cutter approach.
No.
All of a sudden, people with ABIs were being stuck in these molds where their injuries and their needs were completely separate. And until they were looked at in this way, that, okay, these individuals have a completely different injury, completely different needs, completely different focus, and it's not, different label, obviously, I hate to use the word label, and have to be treated differently. A new whole program, like you just said, it makes a huge, that was the biggest difference.
I want to say to my audience, obviously so that you understand, and that's the reason I went around the table like that when we deal with an issue, we're dealing with people who know, that are boots on the ground, that really do the work, that are hands-on, that they know the issue and they've been around it a long time. So that when all of us here are advocates and we're going out there and when we're speaking to politicians and everything else, I wanted you to know who the people are. Just like when I deal with the justice stuff, that we know what it is about the justice system. So it's not, we don't have fluff people. No fluff at this table, right?
No, we break right through.
We break right through.
Well, just like you had mentioned before, too, with your son trying to get where are the programs, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do?
That has, unfortunately, it's still difficult. There's some wonderful people out there in every hospital, in every location who are becoming more and more specialized, but as far as being able to tell people, this is the first step, this is the second step, these are people who talk, these are all the resources, it's still not really laid out any better than it was 15 years ago when they start. And I know myself, there was a while, I've never actually been out of the ABI program, but there was a while that I've been doing a few other things here. But on the side, I have still worked with people who know me, will call me all the time and say, Bonnie, my son, my daughter, whatever the case may be, my family member, where do I start? What's the first thing? What's the second thing? Where do I get the evaluation? Who are the right psychologists to go to? Where do I get the dual diagnosis? I still do all that, getting everybody moving in the right direction so that when they finally get to the waiver or the first application, at least everything else is in line, and then they're not being sent back to step one again. And that's really difficult.
And that's very helpful because it is a scary tunnel you go through. It's a dark, you're going through blindly and feeling your way. And it's not bad, it isn't bad enough that you're suffering over your child or your loved one being injured in that way, but now you're suffering through the paperwork and the system and everything that has to go with it. It's been a lifetime. It's been 15 years of that.
It can almost make somebody feel like they're in like a paralysis too when you realize you just feel so overwhelming by all this. I'm like, how am I ever going to make it through like all this?
Right.
And that's one of the reasons we're seriously political. There's no question about it. I mean, Dominic's over there on the other side. Of course, I rope him into everything, and I call him my lobbyist, and they asked me at the State House, where'd you get him? I said, never mind. So I'm going to keep him because he knows so much. But obviously, we talk about the need for the politic, and I mean, I'm glad that you're back. Going to run again, right?
Thank you, Father.
From a political perspective, and I guess the shows, I want people to know really who Kathy is. I mean, you've gone through serious struggle and everything else like that. Everybody at this table has that we're individuals who know the pain and deal with these issues, and that's
Well, thank you, Father, and I will say that. It's not, people shun politics, but you have to look at our whole country and how things are done in the United States and probably all over the world. it's run politically. It's political. You have to be involved to move forward. It's used as a dirty word, but it's all about politics. I've always said, when people say, I'm not political, well, you are at Thanksgiving if you sit Aunt Mary on the other side of the table from Aunt Lucy because they have fights. So we all have a little of that.
If you leave your house in the morning, there's
That's
something
right.
political in your life.
But
exactly right.
if I could take 1 second,
Sure,
Father.
go ahead.
Okay. I was 3 years after Robert's injury, I ran for first selectman in the town of Oxford as a Democrat. And that year, we pulled in the entire Democrat slate, everyone, and we beat a 2-time incumbent who was born and raised in town. And that was 3 years, and I was still hurting from Robert, of course. He was nowhere along. 3 years is not much in the life of a brain injury. It's a lot. So there I was. When I entered my second year of office, we got the news that my husband had kidney cancer. So now I'm fighting the system again. Kidney, rib, lungs, brain, all involved.
God.
1% chance to make it, okay? So my husband said, you're going to finish the year. So you say you finished, and I didn't run again. Well, I'll fast forward. I gave him his interferon shots myself, then my mother-in-law helped, etc. And during that period of time, and I'm going to say this on film because I'm not ashamed of it. If I had told you I broke my leg and it healed, I want to say this. 3 times in my second year of office as first selectman, I had to be hospitalized for severe depression. And I mean very severe, debilitating. And I was a weekend at Griffin, a week or so at Silver Hill, and a week at Bridgeport, 3 separate times that year. And I came back and still ran the town. I was only in a little while. Those were my vacations for the year, And all right.
Okay.
So having done that, okay, then we move on. I finish the year. I'm still working at my other job too, and all. I'm holding it all together. And then we get news that my daughter-in-law is pregnant. She's 28. She had lost her first child. She's pregnant. And 3 weeks before, and I'm praying my husband lives to see the baby, okay? 3 weeks before she's to deliver, 28 years old, she's diagnosed with breast cancer. So there we go again. And I advocated for her. I knew people in the pathology field. That's my field. I made sure she was taken care of well, and we stood by her. Well, let me tell you all the good news from the bad news. Robert's the artist now, and he drives, he lives alone, and he's very independent. We were blessed. It was a miracle.
And a lot of work.
Yeah, and a lot of work.
A lot of work.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, right.
yes.
Yeah.
Then the second one is, they're still writing about my husband. He is with me.
Uh-huh.
He survived.
Yeah.
That was in 2002 that he
Right.
was diagnosed. He
Yeah.
still survived.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law is a nurse now, and my little granddaughter, who is about 10 and a half years old now, is out fishing today with Grandpa. So I want you to all know that my mother always said when they were going to decide whether they should operate on Robert or not, how he was going to be, the surgeon was not very positive. And my brother and my mother-in-law were there to make the decision, and my brother said, my mother always said, where there's life, there's hope. And so they said, yes, you're going to do everything you can to save him. So there we are today, and I just wanted to tell
We get through.
And
We
you
did.
forgot one of the most important things
Yeah.
when you were first selectman. You dealt with the anthrax scare.
Oh,
in
that's
Oxford.
right. That's
On
right.
top of all this,
Forgot that one.
I mean, how could anybody, for the level of that you had to deal with?
Far be it from the politician that I am, I will have to say, yes, thank you very much, Dominic. Yes, the first day in office, I'm sitting at my desk. I was there about 4 hours, about 3:30 in the afternoon. Phone call comes through from the Pomperaug Health Department. I want to give you a heads up. because you're the first selectman, that you have a possible case of anthrax poisoning in your town.
Great.
And I said, what? I said, you have to be kidding. And he said, no, ma'am, I am not. So he said, I want a heads up because you may hear Governor Rowland do a press conference or whatever, or you may hear it. So I decided at that point, it was my first decision as a first selectman, I said, I'm not going to say a word to anyone in this town hall. So I closed, at 4:30, I left for the day, started to head into Yale, New Haven, where I work, Yale University, where I worked, and I started to head in, and I hear Governor on the radio telling the news about the anthrax in Oxford. So I called my husband. I said, I'm turning around. I'm coming right back to Oxford. He said, yeah, you better. They want you at Southbury. So fast forward, we get to the Southbury Police Barracks, and Governor Rowland, we had to wait a while for him to get there. Governor Rowland comes in, and he sits next to me, just like I'm sitting next to Dominic, and he says to me like this, he patted my hand. He said, now, I understand this is your first day as an elected official. I said, yes, it is. Wow. He said, you don't have to speak. We're going to go to a press conference. He said, I will introduce you, but you don't have to speak unless you want to. So I said, oh, I think I should say something. Okay. So,
Was that like a twist of my arm?
yeah. So he said, okay. So when I got down, as I was going down, I took my two emergency services people and my running mate. I had Dave McCain there, who was the, I'll say second selectman, but really there's no such thing. He was the other Democratic selectman. There's three of us. And then I also had Jerry Schwab, who was our ambulance director, and I picked up the head of our emergency services, Scott Pelletier. So they were behind me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when it came my turn to say what I had to say, of course I got up on the podium, and I looked, and from the half court all the way back to the back basket in the auditorium on the basketball court, there were reporters as far as the eye could see.
Anthrax, yeah.
Oh, so, and it was 2 months after 9/11, you know.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I did my thing, and I got off the podium, and the governor shook my hand, and he looked me in the eye, and he said, and I still say this to this day, no matter what his history is at the moment or whatever, I know what politics is like. He looked at me and he said to me, and mind you, he was a Republican, I a Democrat. He said to me, you're going to make a fine first selectman.
Nice.
And then, of course, the rest was history. And one of the questions I was asked was, Mrs. Johnson, how in the world are you coping with this kind of stress in a small town of 10,000 people in Oxford with all this going on? And I said, well, you have to understand, I said, that I already had my twin towers in my life. I said, I have a son that was brain injured 3 years ago in a car accident. I said, anything after that, short of losing, I can deal with this.
Yeah.
And we did, and the thing I wanted for Oxford at that time was, I wanted the world to see that a little country town of 10,000 people that practically no one in the nation had ever heard of were sophisticated enough to handle a crisis of that magnitude. Mm-hmm. I viewed us as a little New York after 9/11, and I wanted to go through it with dignity and assure the people in Oxford that we were watching and well taken care of. And Father, I know I've talked long, but this is it's
very interesting.
This is very important. I think
It's important because you're running again. You've gone through all this stuff, and the reason I didn't shut you down or anything else is I want your constituency to know.
And I know from a personal level, my wife, who lived in Oxford at the time, she voted for you.
Exactly.
And she also had to go through an FBI investigation because she sold Avon in the town, and she sold Avon products
Oh my goodness.
to the lady that was poisoned from the anthrax. So we're all interrelated one way or the other.
The other thing is, you said too that because you want to show that a small town like Oxford of 10,000 people can handle it, and you can. And part of it, or the biggest part of it, comes from the person at the top who has it all under control and knows how to handle that and keep things calm and do what they have to do.
No matter what.
No matter what.
No matter
Just do
what.
it.
Well, thank you. People don't realize what a stress it was.
Oh,
But here is going to be a punchline.